Crude Audacity podcast.
Everyone, you are listening to the Crude Audacity podcast, the podcast that talks shop shit and all things strategy with oil patch influencers. I am Catherine Mills, and wherever you are listening from, if you could go ahead and leave us a rate and review, and if you happen to be watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that little subscribe button for me. That way you can stay up to date on all things oil, energy, and of course the Crude Audacity. So, today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, a little unconventional, but something that is just running rampant through the oil field right now, which is the digital revolution. And of course, you can go out, you can start a podcast, you can pop off on Twitter, you can friend everyone and their mother on LinkedIn. But really, what is the return? What are you providing to your company? What are you providing to yourself? And how do you measure that? Although we are in a digital revolution, not very many people are asking for the KPIs or proof of the return on investment. So today, my brave influencer has agreed to come on and talk content, talk impact report, and what his team is doing to build a digital strategy that works. So with all that said, Stephen FORRESTER, welcome to the Crude Audacity podcast.
Hi, Catherine. Good afternoon. Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for joining. Usually you're the one putting your people on podcasts. So this is a new angle for you, isn't it?
Yeah, every once in a while I'll get a moment to shine. I'll get a moment of glory from time to time, but usually it's the other way around, where I'm trying to find a spot for our people to go and talk about the company or what we're doing or themselves. So it's my turn today. So we'll see how it goes.
For those that do not know the name right off the top of your head, Stephen is with Gyrodata, and they have been absolutely everywhere. I really commend you for what you're doing, because any platform I get on right now, I see Gyrodata's name, and that is very interesting to me. Y'all have LinkedIn, over 19,000 followers. Facebook, you're growing daily. I've seen you at conferences, virtual conferences. I've seen you on Twitter. I mean, y'all are absolutely everywhere, saturating the market. In the age of consolidation, scaling your business up and down, there's nothing better than word of mouth. And y'all have really taken it to heart to get your name out there and stay on the forefront of all these changes. So, as the head of content and the content development manager, give us your story. How did you start in oil and gas? Why marketing and sales? And what have you seen evolve throughout your career to get you to where you are now?
2013, I got started in the industry. I was coming off of a master's in English and a bachelor's in English, so not exactly your normal path into this business. My dad had been in oil and gas for a long time, so I'd always had some kind of peripheral interest. I just thought it was really neat. Certainly attracted to some of the really kind of obvious components about cool technology and great salaries and benefits and things like that, which at the time were still very true, right? I mean, it was a highly sought after industry to work in. So I had come out with these degrees. I'd been in service industry for about 10 years, waiting tables, kind of floor manager type stuff, nothing crazy. And through a recruitment agency, I came across a position. I started work at Lloyd's Register is the name of the company, or LR. So pretty well known to a lot of folks as far as inspections and compliance reports and statement of fact and stuff like that. So they had brought together two companies they'd purchased and put them in a new kind of company called Lloyd's Register Energy Drilling. So we were the brand new shiny drilling division that just things went nuts. The revenue went through the roof. they were actually poised to eclipse Marine, which is a 230-year division, within about a year of starting this thing. So just again, as testament to how good the times were, right? So
total disruption. I love it.
Yeah. So our team LR historically was a maritime classification society. I mean, they put the stamp on the side of the ships, right, that said you're good to go. So it was a new kind of a new market, really getting into primarily BOP inspection and certification. So our group was handling the subsea aspect. So we reviewed and edited subsea BOP inspection compliance reports. It's not it's about as glorious as it sounds. It was a great it was a great intro to the industry. I was learning all the acronyms and working really closely with all the technical guys who, I mean, the talent at that time was just unbelievable. I mean, we had the guy, he was the VP of that group on the survey side, and he had a patent for Cameron BOPs. Like, he was actually one of the guys that had helped design the Type U back in the day. And so really, and guys that had been with Hydrill and companies that had been acquired through the years, and they'd been there at the beginning. So really great team. We worked on the reports. I was there about a year. They called me a deliverables coordinator, which was the most literal it's the most literal job title I've ever probably had, because the deliverable to the client was the report, was the inspection report with all the tables and charts and diagrams and daily reports.
And it had to be right.
It had to be beautiful, because again, and this was to your point, about the digital revolution. I mean, they were still taking print binders of this stuff, and so we were shipping these to people everywhere on the face of the planet. These giant, 1,000-page binders that had all this stuff compiled for the project. So
I've seen those. It's intense.
Yep, and they'd put them in some dark room somewhere, and you never see it again. Yep, but it was good, and certainly a great intro. Moved on from there to National Oil Varco.
Okay.
My
favorite. Everyone knows that one.
I don't think I need to talk too much about NOV, fortunately, as far as what they do or who they are. So that's a household name for the oil field. My bosses at that point brought me over. It was interesting because my whole experience had been with pressure control, and that was really all I knew about at that point. And the division I started in was called Dynamic Drilling Solutions, which unintentionally was another kind of disruptive division within NOV. So it was a business unit that they had just made by bringing together some of the kind of cool new tech with drilling optimization and drilling automation, and with a bunch of legacy products that were more like commoditized instrumentation products and data management software and visualization, things like that. So they were bringing together these two to make a new business and try and really sell it. And so when they brought me in, that was kind of, my boss was a writer. He was actually the marketing content manager, or content marketing manager was his title. But, another degreed English guy who was like light years ahead as a writer. I mean, just a phenomenal guy. And, a real mentor. And so they brought me kind of on and said, what we need results. We need case studies. Exactly. We need to put this out into the market, right? Because nobody has any idea what DDS is. We want to build a brand name. And we were naming like the products and kind of the services and solutions and trying to get it to stick. And that was kind of where I started at NOV. I did that about 2 years with some really productive years with some of the best teammates I've, ever had, ever been blessed to have. And after that, we had a corporate reorg as these things go, as everybody's painfully aware of at this point.
They're super fun.
Yes, they're great. Yeah, I love it. It's so fun. So they decided that every business wasn't going to have marketing and communications anymore. It was just going to be centralized as a corporate resource. So they did the whole shared services model. They plucked all of us so-called creatives out of the businesses and brought us into this giant corporate team, which at the time was just incredibly massive. I mean, it was I think at that time, I think at its peak was somewhere around 150 people. So that's a pretty large marketing organization. And even at NOV at that time, maybe had 40,000 employees, give or take. So it was a pretty
those
large
are individual firms. I mean, that's
Yeah.
huge
Yeah,
agency.
right. I mean, Gyrodata's got about 600-700 people. So the marketing team was a quarter of our entire staff. So that was trimmed down through the years. But when they brought us into there, so I was then with another writer. So we kind of became a team of two at that point. And the job changed. It stayed the same. Write case studies, document successes, technical articles like for all the industry publications, the World Oils and E&P and JPT, things like that. SP papers, try and help motivate people to write those and get them out there in conferences and things like that. Social
That's
media.
Like sometimes.
Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah, it's painful. I mean, but that was
We'll share your knowledge.
yeah. We'll pay you, right? We'll actually pay you to do this. I mean, how silly, but hey, it works. So we did that, and it was similar as just the whole company. So now it was, she had come from Downhole, which is another division, and then I'd come from DDS. And so we both had a background in kind of downhole tools and drilling dynamics analysis and drilling motors, rotary steerables, all that stuff. And so then they said, well, that's great. Now you can just do everything for the whole company. I mean, they're a little more tactful than that, but it was basically, let's learn the whole thing, which was great for career wise because then I got to write about rig equipment and capital equipment and BHA design and completion tools and even some kind of out there things like fiberglass pipe and
that's actually very cool.
Some kind of like composite materials and corrosion resistant stuff and tubing and piping and drill pipe. I mean, we kind of covered it all, and did that for most of the rest of the time there. I got involved with investor relations a little bit kind of towards the end. I guess for about 2 years, which was really awesome. Probably the greatest challenge, but also the most rewarding thing that I did because just to work with high level executives like that, and a major kudos to them for even allowing me to do that and to sit in on their quarterly meetings where they're reviewing this micro level financial and operational stuff about what we were doing, and then trusting me and one other guy to kind of write scripts for the earnings calls and whatnot and going through those together. So huge opportunity. Was absolutely in no way trained in that or anything. So it was awesome.
I love that though. I love that.
Well, Clay, it was cool because for SPE, I'm an SPE member, and early on I joined. They have a publication for young professionals called The Way Ahead. So it was once a magazine, now it's digital. And at that time, I was in this section called Business Benchmarks, and so I had this idea of I should just try and interview our CEO. I don't know. I was never like a big. I mean, to this day, I'm not a huge fan of kind of like formality and really really big, like really thick layers of red tape and all that. I mean, I
always tell my boss, I'm like, I'm so glad you're used to me because like this whole structure thing, it's just not going to work.
I actually told him, I just emailed him. I was like, I'm just going to email the CEO and pray. I'm going to pray that, I don't find my termination notice thereafter. So I asked him if I could do an interview for this SP column, and he said yes. And so I went in, I took I took my phone with me, recorded an interview, just asked him about kind of his career and advice for young professionals, really simple stuff. And then afterwards we shut it off, and he said, so like, what do you do? Like, who are you? Like, how did we kind of come here? How did you even end up in front of me? Like, so I told him I'm an English guy and I'm not your average, technical writer / content person. I just kind of have made it through kind of learning and sheer will. and he was like, so you're telling me I have like an English guy that works at this company and like that's your thing, but I've never had anybody. Yeah, right. Did someone in HR make a mistake?
Yeah, exactly. Like, did they?
And he was actually said, if I had known that, he said, I need to talk to Jose, the CFO. I need to see if like we can get you involved. Like we could use some help with that kind of stuff. And then it just blossomed into this awesome thing. And so that was kind of my title changed near the end. I got a manager title. I had a couple reports for a little while, for about 9 months. And not a lot changed in the way of the job. It was more of it was a little more superficial. I mean, I kind of helped them, and typical kind of delegated some work and tried to have more ideas, and it was a cool time. I really liked it, and both of them I had already worked with for a long time, so it wasn't like there was a huge like awkward relationship. It wasn't weird or anything. I knew them, and one was stay at home anyway, so it wasn't the most challenging manager job. Yeah, but I left there last year. A friend of mine, she was here, excuse me, and she was a marketing manager over here at Gyrodata, and we had worked together at NOV. Again, you know how small the oil field is. So she had worked in our NOV's wired drill pipe group, and we had interfaced a lot with that in the team I was on, with along string measurements, with high speed telemetry and things that enabled drilling automation. And so she said, "Yeah, I need a writer." She was on board. She was a marketing person, knew it from day one. Said, "I just have nothing. I need a resource like this." And I kind of hired somebody, and I was trying to get her to a level where I want her to be, and now she's leaving. So I'm out. I'm out in the cold. I need somebody. Are you on the market? And we just had lunch, and it was like, actually, yeah, I need a change. I need something more. And bada bing, bada boom, the magic happened. Here we are. And unfortunately, it went kind of in layoffs and consolidation. And even when I started in November last year, we had a drilling services division with MWD equipment, with motors, rotary steerables, and we sold that entire division off. And just kind of refocused on being a surveying company and some wireline offerings. And as we were downsizing, which led to something, several hundred people. I mean, it was tough. And
it's COVID. It is what it is.
It's COVID, and it's commodity price, and just it was just it's a rough market, and I get it. And so I kept counting my blessings that I was not one of the ones that was in the group that was let go. And actually my former boss was one of the people, I think, in March. And so then it kind of got really chopped down to me and one other guy. So in total contrast to the big giant NOV team that even at its fewest members was like 35 to 40 when I left. We're two. And so I'm kind of all the like writing and technical writing, any kind of, as the title would suggest, any kind of content development or ideas for that kind of stuff. And then he does like graphic design and more with our website. So it really works well. We work really well together. It's just like kind of a perfect pairing on the skill set. Because he can do things that I just can't do. And the same thing, I can do things that he can't do. And so it just works together really well. And, here we are. It's coming up. It's actually about a month till I hit my year mark. So, I made it, let's hold out at least another week, but
I passed my year mark with Surtech just like 2 weeks ago. And I was honestly, if my boss is listening, I was expecting a party.
Yeah.
But apparently that wasn't worked into the budget.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Gyrodata is having its 40th, our 40th year in business was actually in September. And
that's incredible.
So we're hanging in there, and good things are happening. And but we joked because everybody back in the good old days, at least we would probably have had regional events, or even even like a little barbecue outside, nothing crazy, but just something to say thank you. And if you've made it with us and you've stuck with us, thanks for being here. And that has been so complicated by current current conditions, it's like,
I
I guess we're going to do a video.
Throw a party. You can come to Denver. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Okay.
We have an office in Denver. My boss actually lives in Denver, so he's up there.
Oh, I didn't realize that. That's awesome.
It's funny because he's here this week, so he's in Houston for a little trip and kind of getting back in touch with the gang. But yeah, he's up in Denver most of the time. So, and it's different.
Stephen,
because,
I know.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. So, Stephen, I know that when I asked you to do this and kind of went through the idea with you, it was a new topic. Like we said in the intro, it's one that people are slowly but surely trying to figure out, navigate. How does investing in a digital strategy actually benefit me as a company, being an operator, Oilfield Services, one of the peripheral companies? I mean, the oil field is vast. We touch everything. And the reason I liked your story so much is because most of your story involves you figuring it out from the ground up. So I know I was looking down a little bit when you were talking, but I'm actually taking notes to ask you more questions. But,
oh boy.
I know, right? So I actually think what is so unique about you is that you are a creative. You fall in that creative category. You have an English degree. And as we all know, if you want to be found in a digital world, copy your text. That is really the most important thing. Podcasts are great, sure, whatever, YouTube. But the copy itself is how the crawlers find you to push you into different levels so that you can be found easier. I mean, heck, we even have hashtags that's still copy, So let's go back a little bit here, because most people, especially operators, some small guys on service side, they rely on word of mouth. And to me, word of mouth is still the most important recommendation, testimonial bit of marketing that is out there. And everything else is a pillar of which it pushes word of mouth higher. However, we used to do this in print ads. We used to do this in nothing on LinkedIn. It was conferences and sending the same three guys just around the country traveling for different conferences. Yeah. So what have you seen since you started, and where are we now from your perspective?
Well, you're 100% right as far as, I mean, the old way of doing it, at least, from what I've seen in, 2014, and even in that kind of, emerging into that downturn, which has really just persisted the past half decade. But starting there, the budgets as far as marketing, especially at, decently sized companies like an NOV, or especially on oilfield services sector with your Schlumbergers and Bakers and NOV and the like, there's still a lot of budget for marketing at that point. And like you said, it was all stuff like print ads. Let's put 2 ads in this magazine, and we'll buy the front cover and the back cover, and
How
then we'll write an article.
Strategize for that. Yeah. How did you know where you wanted to be? Because we have there's a lot of room for print advertisements, but in terms of like the top 10, it's never really changed where you go for your information. So how were y'all deciding what factors were pushing you in front of what publications?
Well, I'd say in my first kind of couple years, we didn't even do much print because just it was so expensive. I mean, when you're talking $7,000 to $13,000+ for a single page, and as you mentioned in your intro, I mean, there's no measurable anything on this unless maybe there's like an ad survey and you get some comments, but the likelihood you ever know that a sale came from that is virtually
zero.
So we didn't do a lot, and the ones we did, we would just really target magazines, oilfield specific magazines that had the highest kind of readership, and ones that we also felt the content kind of best fit our message, I guess you could say. So like JPT, for example, was always kind of the premier publication. It was the industry's flagship publication. And gosh,
Yes.
I hope nobody from any of my friends at all the others, please don't stomp on me, but I think that was somewhat understood because JPT was totally neutral. There were no articles in there with contributed content. It was all tech papers and things that their editorial team had broken down into more accessible content. Things for thought leaders and executives. There was just no aspect of any kind of pay to play. It was totally neutral, and so we liked that first. I mean, we actually did an insert when we were doing drilling automation, and we had named it. We finally gave it a name for our side. So all of our kind of combination of goodies with downhole data analysis and drilling dynamics and all that, we had put it under this Evolve banner. So it's called Evolve. And then on the rig side, so we were in Wellbore Technologies, and then rig equipment or rig technologies was another business segment. They had this thing called Novos, which was the process. It was the platform that you used at surface. So it was the process automation platform that would basically use the data from downhole to inform automated equipment functions at surface. So the driller isn't having to do 500 million things anymore that are these really kind of tedious manual processes, because the system was using the data to optimize it all and perform some of these things automatically. And so we made this brochure bringing these two concepts together because we were totally different businesses. So they'd say, oh, well, the surface thing is so great. We'd say, yeah, but you want your downhole data, and we needed to bring that together in a message that made sense because it needed to be sold together as kind of a more holistic thing. And you could do one or the other separately, but you weren't unlocking most of the value unless it was kind of together. And so we made this brochure and wrote all this copy. And I mentioned my boss then, Jason Hedgepeth, that was really kind of his baby as far as writing it. And I just kind of helped. But we packaged that sucker up with JPT and an insert that came, plastic wrapped and was mailed to, at that point, times were good. I mean, mailed to 90,000 plus people. So it was good, right? And so that was something big we did, and again, hard to measure, if not impossible to measure. But
there's a metric there. So you get a one pager, some sort of ad together. You know how many individuals it's getting mailed to.
Yeah.
The problem, to your point, was the impressions at that point. Just because it's in there doesn't mean that people flip to your page.
Yeah, or that they read it, or that they even engage in any way, or maybe they do read it, but then they don't act. That's probably the majority. Is they might see it and make it to there, and they might even read the copy, but then it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? And then it's just the next. And they're bombarded with information. I mean, you're inundated, even in print. It's like these, the companies that are running these magazines, whether it's SPE or Gulf Information or whoever, or Gulf Energy. I mean, they're all trying to make money too. And so these things have a lot of ads in them. And sometimes it's like, I read an article and then there's an ad. And then I read an article and then there's two ads. And it's just, there's a lot of stuff. So if I have
what's funny about that though, is it's the same argument that's happening in digital. Is I know I can get impressions. I know I can get out in front of people and have a big reach, but what is my call to action generating something that I can measure?
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be. So it moves to
right?
reputational marketing.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with your earlier statement about kind of, word of mouth and reputation being the kind of, especially in marketing, as far as what we can do, that kind of being, the top line up there, and then a lot of other things that we do, whether it's organic or, maybe something we budget for that's, a paid campaign, all of that should just certainly serve its own purpose, but also reinforce that kind of overarching goal of, of spreading word, and certainly letting your customers be your advocates, and your employees. You want them to be your advocates as well, and get them engaged internally, and externally. There's a lot of factors to it. So
no, and that's a really good point. There is a very different strategy between external and internal. But before we jump into that one, because it is one of my extra questions I wrote down for you, surprise. Let's talk about conventions and the old way of conventions, because it was always the same group of people. It was the same booth that might get updated. I mean, anywhere from $35 to $55 just for the square footage, and then $115 to maybe $155 for like the look and feel of the booth. I mean, they got ridiculously expensive. The same people were traveling to them, and all you needed was one sale out of it. That could make the difference. That could justify the convention. So were they really effective for us, or was it just a good party?
I mean, again, I hope is anybody listening, from SPD or something, but no, I mean, it's tough because, I went to OTC for several years. I always enjoyed it. Like, I personally got something out of it, and professionally, I got something out of it, even if it's just networking or whatever. But from a revenue standpoint, I mean, I didn't ever hear about a sale being made, but I was always extremely skeptical of, at least where I was working, if a sale came from any of our activities at these conventions, especially the big ones like OTC, where this is costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, and potentially even more than that. And so when you look at that, and it's like, we have this giant aisle, it's a giant booth, and it's right on the main aisle, so it's super visible, and we'll lay out collateral, and like you said, we have 20 sales guys that are just walking around and trying to talk to people, and I very highly doubt that anything substantial came from that. And we actually would have little information desks where people could go and ask more specific questions, and kind of the hope was a salesperson might engage with someone, and then they could bring them over to that little desk, and they would input their information in our system, and we'd provide the right contact, maybe a technical contact to follow up, or
so you were list building. That was the ROI of the conventions.
So we're trying to do that, but the problem was, how often was that happening or successful was it was definitely not frequent enough to merit like being at the conference. I mean, because so many people were job seekers, an enormous amount of been there, done that. I mean, and an enormous amount of vendors, especially with NOV being in the manufacturing space, and people trying to say, well, do you want to buy, our steel and metal companies, and just a lot of stuff that even had merit, maybe a part, or it could be worth pursuing, but to revenue generation just wasn't going to happen. And I was always interested with what we did at the company, because we had this giant booth, cost a lot of money, a lot of time for our personnel too, sales, technical, marketing, comms, you name it. We're all there. These are all just salaries that are basically free for a week. And guilty as charged. I've went every year until they canceled it. But and so what we did at NOV was we had this famous shrimp boil thing, and we had a big facility off of Holmes Road, a tuboscope facility down there, and they just put a massive shrimp boil together, and actually would transport a land rig, one of our land rigs down there, and all this capital equipment would be laid out, whether it's top drives and BOPs and shakers and you name it. It was out there for everybody to see and touch and interact with. And these weren't models. I mean, this was actual equipment, and for people to go on tours of this. I mean, it was a functional land rig that they could go up there and see everything.
Experience. That's a very unique way to market. It's not just saying we're subject matter experts, pay attention. You provided something that actually got people curious about what you were doing to ask more questions.
Yeah, it was, I mean, and again, attending it as an employee was one thing, and it was great, but I mean, for our guests, we would bring food trucks out, we'd do a shrimp boil, there would be beer and beverages, there's ice cream. Yeah. And Tuboscope would actually do these commemorative, like pint glass looking things, I don't know if it was a pint glass, but I actually have one somewhere. I don't know, this might be awkward, but I'll, yeah, like
just say it. Yeah, just say it again. Here, like just say it again and then pull it in. Yeah.
But so they would do these commemorative.
Can you do that one more time?
Oh yeah. So like this was one of them. Where's my camera? There it is. So right like there. They did that one in 2018, and then like a really, just really simple ones like that was from one year, just a simple pint glass. And I mean, this was like a weird Oilfield like collector's item, and Reed Heikelog would give out like these little drill bit plushies, or not plushie, but like the stress reliever thing, and I mean,
stress balls.
Yeah, but it was in the shape of a PDC bit, and I mean, people went bonkers for this stuff. Everybody loves Oilfield swag. I mean, it's well documented. I love this stuff, but that event was fun, educational, informational for customers, and even we'd have students there and stuff. I mean, it was just a great industry thing. And truth be told, the budget for that, including like transport of all that equipment and the logistics and everything, was less than half of what that they would spend on OTC.
And what's funny about that is probably the most effective marketing, because you have provided that experience than any sort of conventional cost.
Yeah, the whole experiential thing is, getting people to actually do something and engage with something. And, and I'm obviously not there anymore, so I don't know what the plan will be moving forward. But there was a lot of talk of, and there's been talk of that at Gyrodata too, as far as do we really need to do conferences anymore ever? I mean, are we ever going to rent a booth space again? And for us, actually, the answer is probably no for us. I mean, except for maybe very targeted or very specific things that are extremely cost effective. Especially more like local or regional events that we can maybe do several instead of just one big thing.
Exactly.
Like we'll sponsor a AADE golf tournament type thing, and we'll send our guys out there. We have a big cooker, like we'll send them out there to cook up some food and play golf and like just simple stuff. So it's not really a sales activity per se, but it also doesn't cost $100,000 to get a booth space. It's a totally different scale, and so I think here we'll look at things like that ahead of any major booth type thing, and certainly at larger companies they'll probably reevaluate. It's tough to call that, because I mean, I can't see an OTC without like Schlumberger having a booth, for example. It would just be weird if they're not there.
It would be weird, right?
Yeah. If they're not there, why are any OFS companies there? But then on the flip side, I remember back in the day when GE Oil and Gas had a booth. And I think it was the last year that they had a booth, and they had their giant new subsea MUX pod thing. And it was like the coolest thing ever. And I mean, it was like stretching up to the ceiling of the arena.
I know, yeah.
And I mean, probably how much did they pay to transport? Those were the days when everybody, Cameron was its own company still, and they had BOPs and valves and everything just sitting out on the show floor, that, the good old days. And how much were the logistical costs of all that? And sure enough, GE stopped. GE Oil and Gas was gone next year. They didn't have a booth anymore, probably because to the early point, there was no ROI, especially to justify that kind of cost of transporting capital equipment. So
did you ever, the old ways where there was no measurable ROI, were you being asked by upper management about KPIs, so key performance indicators? How many impressions did we make? How many cards did we get? Anything along those lines in order to report back on? I mean, I would have a hard time seeing you going into your CEO's office and saying, well, it went great. Okay, but what does that
I mean, at NOV, I'm sure there was something said, and I mean,
Yeah.
That was kind of the challenge with, a large team, a kind of siloed team as well. So kind of content and writing was one thing, and animation 3D is one thing, and events is one thing, and design. There were so many groups, and then really as far as event prep and planning and budgeting, I mean, that was going through kind of the highest level of our team, which, we had a C-suite executive over marketing. And so that was probably somewhere in some conversation, Clay said, I want to know if OTC accomplished this, this, and this. I'm sure there was goal setting. I was not ever aware of it personally. So for us, it was more of like, are people even like engaging with the booth that we design, or that we kind of, we creatively develop a concept around what the booth should look like, and or do we get models for the booth, or do we like print out marketing collateral and put it in folders that people can take? And so kind of we would take those ideas, and another thing that was really difficult to measure, other than purely either, did people take the content or take the print material, and did we have them engaged? Yeah, we had this. Yeah, well, that too. Yeah. Stop giving that away at some point. It's like here's a pen, but.
So I find this so interesting, because now, as we move into the portion of the discussion that focuses on a digital strategy and how you can create new markets and earn really, market share, expand your market share, because you put something online now and it takes 30 seconds and you're all over the world. It's interesting to me that, are the old ways still valuable? Because word of mouth, anything that elevates word of mouth is valuable one way or the other, but do you need the print advertisement? To your point, do the conventions matter? People don't get mad at me. I'm just saying we got to rethink some of this. We're in a pivot. So what are you seeing? When y'all started adopting this digital strategy, was it simply word of mouth and just trying to make sure you were on every platform? Or was there, hey, this is where we're headed, this is the strategy that needs to be behind it?
I think, at Gyrodata, there was some kind of anticipation of this happening by, even when I started. I think that my former boss, I think she kind of knew that we were going to need to change our ways. And I even before I started here, Gyrodata was already kind of looking at things like conference travel spend, and they had just done Adapec right before I started, and there were, and this was 20, November 2019, and there were, I think, 5 or 6 people that were sent to Adapec, and for, a couple of them were in country, but several of the executives were straight from the U.S. overseas, and that was really, I think, the last conference that anybody like flew out to, or paid for a booth or anything. And as far as I know, we did it because we were kind of commercializing some new technology, and it was an important market to hit in the Middle East, and so there were some justifications for it. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it definitely is changing, and I don't even think it's like it's tough for me because I love print. Like I mean, imagine that as a reader and writer, that I want, like, I'm still the guy. I never had an Amazon Kindle. I've got like a closet full of books. I love holding something tactile.
But I would say that although print might be changing, copy, the importance of copy wherever it is, has not changed. That is literally that's like word of mouth. It is a foundational element to make your ads, your strategy, your new market evaluations effective. You have to have good copy. You have to communicate like that way.
Yeah, I'm on board more than and certainly have certainly faced some challenges here and there with because in kind of the creative world, I think that there's sometimes a kind of a self-defeating, battle between copy and content as one side, and then the other side with design and visuals. And there's this weird like back and forth to where, well, people, and it all has some validity, right? Okay, well, people,
Yes.
their attention spans are very short, so we can't have a lot of copy, and we don't want to bombard them with too much information, so we really need to shorten it down, and catchy tagline or headline and whatnot. And then on the other side,
you were naming new equipment and new processes. Title matters.
Yeah, I mean, and it was and it's even more so in the oil field, I think, because a lot of times you needed a good visual to kind of draw attention to the page and hook somebody. You don't want, if you have a very boring graphical element or whatever, they probably won't even stop on the page. It's just people flip and they see whatever they see. Something has to catch your eye. So I was always on board with the idea
that the iPhone, the flipping right, flipping left, scrolling up, scrolling down. There has to be some sort of impact moment that grabs the attention. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because we keep iPhones in our pockets. They are constantly collecting millions upon trillions of data points on us. And what you're saying is, why aren't we applying that to the digital sector, to the print, the marketing side of the oil and gas world? And it also might be a reason why operators look at marketing as an unnecessary item, when really, to what you said earlier, it goes back into investor relations. Why do I invest in you? Why do I give you my funding if you're not, cool idea, but what makes me want to take that next step with you? And it's reputational marketing, hands down.
Especially for operating companies. Many of, if not all of whom, are embroiled in kind of current fights over ESG and corporate social responsibility, whatever acronym we want to attach to it. Everybody's needing to justify to investors their plan moving forward so that they can try and get some more money. They're trying to prove that there's some aspect of how they do business that's green or environmentally sound. And, you have some companies that are way on one side, like BP or, Shell, or some of the European companies that are saying, we're going to rapidly approach this kind of, decarbonization and making us more green, environmentally sustainable and whatnot. And then there's others that are saying, we're good, we're going to keep on drilling, and we'll try and do it better. We're going to do it more safely. But all of them could benefit from, like you said, reputationally,
there needs to be a communication
building that up. Yeah, because we as an industry are very bad at helping ourselves, and I think that's operators, it's oilfield services, it's tech. Whatever. We're an insular community that's really good at rallying around one another. Whether it's on LinkedIn or in person or via podcasts or whatever. Like we like oil and gas, and we're all about this. And outside of that, it's kind of a really uphill battle with everyone else that either doesn't know what we do. So it's kind of like, how do you combat just general ignorance or people that are entrenched in kind of a negative worldview about oil and gas? And so how do you address that? So there's a lot of things, but operators, what I've seen through the years is it's very difficult. I think anybody that's in oilfield services would know this, but it's often very difficult to get them to write things with you. Or, whether it's like a press release about a great project, or even like a technical article about just something individually that you've done. If you can, there's
this misconception that you aren't protecting data.
Yeah.
But the problem is that you're also not collecting it.
Yeah.
Sorry, just making sure it wasn't my boss. But you're protecting data, but you're not collecting it either. You're not using it to your benefit. And isn't that the point of data collection, is that, and having this data, is that it is to be utilized for your benefit. So I'm a huge advocate of finding your voice, because in the world of social media, and we'll get into that, but in the world of social media, there's nowhere to hide. So the old ways, that old mentality, that keep your head down, the doors closed, get your work done, that's only a portion of the pie now. Now you have to actually have an outward communication strategy and to your point earlier, an internal communication strategy to help support the outward communication strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we with people, you need your employees to be engaged and energized, and I think internal communication suffers quite often because there's just so many approaches to it, or there might not be any approach to it at all at some companies. It's just kind of like, well, we have our intranet, right? I mean, that's fine. I mean, and that's it. Yeah. Hey, look, you talk to your colleagues on the email. It's fine. You know what's going on. I mean, and it's not as challenging at maybe a company like Gyrodata because we're small, and so it is very interconnected. And we have a very kind of bare bones intranet that we use, and it has document repository and lots of forms and files and conversations.
So it's your dark social.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? I mean, people want that and need a kind of a quote unquote safe place. I mean, and they can talk about whatever, and we can talk about confidential projects and things that we need to discuss that we want to review, but it's not ready to go anywhere else. So
exactly,
we're doing okay, but we're also very small. But when you have giant corporations, it becomes infinitely more challenging to implement any kind of thing. I mean, NOV used Yammer, which I think they did Microsoft, which I think Microsoft owns now. But so we had Yammer, and it was, I don't know how many people used Yammer, but it wasn't a lot. And every time I say it, I just feel a part of my soul just leaving my body. But it was intended to be this amazing thing that, employees can communicate and they can put up stuff. And there certainly were people that used it, but out of the employee base, I mean, hell, I would be surprised if 10% used it. And maybe it's more. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I mean, I never saw the numbers, but it was almost like an echo chamber. It was like the people that used it very frequently and used it for a lot of different things. And so you'd see them pop up here, and they're all these different threads and everything. And that was kind of it. And so everybody that used it did, and it just became this group of, however many people that were just talking amongst themselves. And it's like, well, hey, that doesn't solve the fundamental problem of kind of internal comms is unifying the company around something. And also at NOV, especially a manufacturing company, a problem we faced a lot was, what about all the people in the shop?
Yeah.
Or in a lab or in the field
different
or wherever they are.
Styles, different interests, different, key points of relevance.
Yeah. And do they even have access to a computer? I mean, like, if I'm a welder, how often do I check my laptop if the company even assigned me one? Like, or if I'm a I might be a contract worker in one of these shops or whatever, and I don't even need a computer. Like, I clock in, I clock out, I do my thing, I have my shift, I get paid. Like, I don't need a company email. What are they going to do? And I mean, so how do you build engagement and a community with folks that you can't reach? It's
very true. Well, that's getting me, and I'm sorry, do you have time? I know we're about to go over a little bit.
Oh, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, good, because I'm really enjoying this conversation. So now you're at Gyrodata, y'all are really implementing this digital strategy, and I have seen you guys absolutely everywhere. So you and I've talked a little bit. I've got about 3 clients that I do digital strategy development for, consulting, or just their whole thing right now. And the thing I always hit home is reach, rate, and retention. Those are the 3 truths in social media. But digital strategy contains podcasts. It contains social media platforms. It contains copy, website. Some people have gone as far to say that it's the little voice recording on the voicemail when you call the company. It's more encompassing. There's strategy behind everything and every portion of it. So what are your top 3 priorities in your current digital strategy?
Well, I guess, I mean, at the top is visibility, especially with, coming into this, coming to the company and not really having a program at all. And as far as a communications program, and then, kind of recognizing that we're operating in a niche market anyway. So it's not like every rig needs a top drive type thing. I mean, it's a gyro for wellbore surveying, so it's not it's not quite the same scale. And also, yeah, I mean, we just didn't have a program anyway, and so do people even know who Gyrodata is, other than those that operate in this small market? And I mean, I'd been in the oil field for 6 years, which wasn't, a crazy long time or anything, but I'd never heard of the company before. And not that I was, so I was not some bastion of knowledge or, like that's not some catch-all thing where like, oh God, he didn't know. But I was pretty informed, and I mean, I knew next to nothing about wellbore surveying and stuff like that. I mean, so that was kind of an early point, was how do we get out there, for a company that had one article published in 2018, one piece of content in the entire, oil and gas community or sphere of influence, one thing, and then in 2019, I think they had like 6 or something before I started. So, how do we take that to the next level? Because and really that was why, my boss Jennifer had brought me on, because I had done that for NOV, and I'm not trying to, it wasn't just me by myself or anything. I'm not trying to, toot my own horn, but that was part of the plan that, we had developed. Was NOV was kind of the same. I mean, it was a more common name because of how diverse it was and how large it was, but our goal was get it out there into the eye of all the oil and gas community as well, especially things that they didn't know that NOV did, or maybe they kind of knew but they needed to know more. Yeah, everybody knows that you build BOP stacks and top drives and stuff, but do they know that you, like I said earlier, do they know that you have fiberglass reinforced polymers that you use to build railings for offshore platforms? Probably not. So how can you talk about things that are actually not supported a lot? And we increased their output from, something well over 300% over the course of a couple of years. And that was a pretty conservative estimate too, because it was tough for me to kind of count content pieces in 2016. It was like, I don't know, I'm just going to kind of round up what I can. So I kept this really detailed and annoying spreadsheet, and logged everything and all the articles.
I totally want to see that spreadsheet. I want to see how you built up your tracker.
I have one here too. I'll see if I might have a copy of the old one, which was just, I mean, it was just so annoying. I mean, but I'm OCD, like, so I love that kind of stuff, like updating it. I don't like Excel even, but just like spreadsheets, I'm like, yes, that one, we wrote that one. I can put the title in that box now. It's so silly, but so I tried to do the same thing here, was get the name out there, visibility, certainly reputation, like we've been talking about. I mean, because again, can we highlight the successes that we're having and what we're doing? Can we get customers involved? Can we get more data on things and not just say, we drilled a well and it was placed a little better. I mean, I want, like, tell me what that means. And so, that way we can tell we can tell the audience what it means.
Exactly.
And that way they can understand it, because not everybody's in wellbore surveying and in this field. And so if you're reading this, like, I want a reservoir engineer to read this and say, wow, okay, when they did the ellipse of uncertainty, it was reduced by X%, which actually increased the recovery factor by so many percent. Like, that's the kind of stuff I want to get into, more the nitty gritty versus the kind of high level, which was really more where it was at before. And getting our employees involved, getting customers involved. We started a thing, and it wasn't just me. I mean, it was our team, but where we send the sales guys every social media post. And it's like an email distribution. It's like 35 people or something, and not just sales, but I mean, we send it to our CEO. And so everybody can share it if they want, like it, comment, all the above, none of the above. I mean, whatever they want to do that makes sense for their profile and their audience and who they're trying to sell to. So we kind of did something like that and put that into place. And so
you have an internal engagement strategy to get people on board. And if they're not on board, it's noticeable, I will say, because it can only help them to make a sale. But it's kind of funny. We had this divergence of sales and marketing because nobody likes a hard sale. But then you kind of see them slowly coming back together. Again, not in the form of a hard sale, but like subject matter expert reputational marketing to get your foot in the door. So it's kind of interesting how they've kind of ebbed and flowed from each other, but usually are still in the same sphere.
Yeah, we should be. I mean, if I'm not, because I can write about whatever till the cows come home if I have the right material and the right support, especially after people take the time to, teach me about the subject. I mean, that was kind of my thing was, as a non-technical person, I don't want to just regurgitate existing ideas or copy. I want to be able to understand this as much as I can without my engineering degree. Don't get me
easily as you can.
Don't get me to the physics and the calculus and stuff. I got an A in algebra in college, and then it was all downhill from there. But help me understand it to the point where, like with you or whoever, I can at least talk intelligently about the topic. And so do this for me.
That's an interesting point. That's a really interesting point, because it used to be a subject matter expert in the world of academia, you had to be submitting papers to SPE or AAPG. And don't get me wrong, I still support these societies, but there was a shift to a more social edge of them and a less technical edge. And I think because of the rise of social media, we're seeing a little bit of the death of SPE and these other societies, because no longer do you need them to be your voice and your check mark. And what's the rule of thumb? If there are more than 5 authors, 3 of them didn't write it. So,
what I mean?
Yeah. Like,
been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of fun to see individuals build up their personal brands and energy, companies build their brands, and even just, those who might not even be selling anything slowly realize, hey, I can't hide. I need a communication style, both internal and external. Yeah. So when you're going through this process and you're building it up here at Gyrodata, how did you pick your platform? Your platform right now in a social world seems to be LinkedIn, but you guys are everywhere. Like, you are so oversaturated, which I think is, I always say oversaturation is your best friend and your worst enemy. Because you're never going to annoy anybody being in an oversaturated market, but you will always be top of mind. Yeah.
No, coming over here, my first thing was definitely writing, as you'd suspect. I wanted to get them involved because they had all this amazing technology and all this cool stuff, and I don't think people really knew about it. Other than some kind of product launches and things like that, but I wanted to get it out there, way out there in the world, and the more the merrier. And so definitely on on articles, and I'm a big editorial fan as far as the magazines, more so than the journals. Not that there's anything wrong or bad about the journals. It's just incredibly difficult to get content in there. It's requires them to be so much more technical and in the weeds and cited, and it's a time sink, and that to me was always kind of like you just said with SPE or whoever it is, ADE or AAPG. That was almost like a notch on the belt type thing. It was like a contest. It would be, well, we wrote 300 SPE papers this year, and so-and-so only wrote 200, so we're better. It wasn't necessarily the content of the paper or what it said or was it original. It was just like a quantity type thing over quantity.
Interesting.
So that's kind of what I saw. So I support those papers, but also the inability to share them broadly, because they're using that as a revenue generating thing. So they want the members to go buy them. That makes it very difficult for you to expand the reach when they're kind of saying, well, yeah, if you want to send this around to a few people via email, it's cool, but don't put it on your website, okay? It's like, why did I write it then? Oh, it's just so everybody knows that I wrote a paper. And yeah, to your point, I've been very fortunate because early on, at NOV and certainly at Gyrodata, I met people that said, what you're doing is important. It's very critical to us to not only have things in the magazines or wherever, but also to have them be well written, articulate, compelling,
Yep.
Whatever nice word you want to attach to it. And so they said, you can be byline. Like, we don't care that you're not an engineer. You're contributing this. I mean, in some cases, I would write the whole thing. I'd get a PowerPoint and I'd write the entire article and then send it back for review and make sure it was correct, because I'm just going from what I have. So
I have to do that sometimes. I'm like, here, I'll write version 1. You give me your edits, and then we'll get the final out.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that worked really well, because engineers were so burdened with so many things to do, so much time to actually, hopefully, either whether it's engineers and product development, or whether it's salespeople, hopefully making money for the company, their first goal was not to write papers. And so to be that resource was what I wanted to do, was say, look, I'm asking one time, sit down with me and teach me about this as much as we can. Give me 1 hour of your time, and then I'll go back to my cubicle. You won't see me anymore. I'll go hide back in my hole where I belong, and then send me the PowerPoints and send me the presentations and send me the run reports and all the data. I want it all. Just dump everything over into my inbox, and I'll see what I can do with it, whatever kind of magic I can work. And then I'll send that draft to you, and we'll go from there. So writing, when I came over here, writing was the big thing I wanted to do. And then podcasting, which as we're on one now, yay, so I bought it. Look at me, I've evolved too. But podcasting, I'd been interested in it. We had a podcast NOV, and so I never really took it as like that I needed to get us involved in podcasting at the company. I kind of always thought, well, if we want to be on external ones, and you'll see like NOV people are almost never on external podcasts. And I kind of always thought, well, if they want them to be on, that they will, right? So I just kept writing and doing my thing. But at Gyrodata, it was totally different. No, there's nothing here. There's no podcast, whatever. So I said, how do we engage this as a communications medium and use this channel, this format that has a burgeoning audience? I mean, it's growing exponentially at a time when some of the others are rapidly declining.
Exactly.
And I just emailed so many people and reached out to them on LinkedIn if I couldn't find an address, or connected with people and just tried to get it out there that we have folks that would like to talk about whether it's what we do at the company, or an awesome project, or their story, or individual pieces of technology, you name it. I have somebody that I want to be on there and just to talk about this, and to be to be an advocate for the company. And then we can use that material not only for where it goes out into the world, and then the podcast itself gets shared and it gets its views and it gets transferred around social, but also for us to be able to share it too.
That's the same case with social media, podcasting, and then website. You want to understand impact. So, when you're going through this, and one of the main points is, how are you building into your KPIs? Because I truly believe that your ROI in a media and sales perspective, like in sales, you can come back and you can say, I went here, it cost this much, I sold this much because of it. Marketing tying to sales is a little harder, like you said, and not very many people, like, they might have said, oh, we saw your ad, but they're not reporting that back to you. So it's a visibility thing, like you're saying. So how are you guys starting to, as you're hitting visibility very, very well, as I've said earlier, but how are you starting to build your KPIs to build into your ROI? Because it's a process.
Yeah, and it is tough. I mean, right now, one of the main things we look at for when we do social and we do podcasts and stuff like that, we're looking at all your standard stuff as far as impressions and views. And really for podcasting, for example, I mean, I'll present an end of year report where I'm going to try and aggregate all this information into some kind of digestible thing and say, okay, we did we did 25 podcasts this year. Collectively, they got X views on our social channels. They got X impressions. Then I get the data back from the people who actually posted it and say, and then also there's that, and then kind of create, caveats to this and say, but we also had 7 sales guys share that one and 8 share that one. And so I can't, that's not even, I guess I could go and ask each one for every metric on every post, but I'd rather just make a generalization and say, these numbers are not even as good as they're even better than they look. Because we have, and for podcasting as an evergreen format, they're continuing to gain views to this day.
Exactly.
So just go ahead and top off that number with another 10%. And that's what it might end up as at some point. So that's kind of on the podcasting side, on the explicitly kind of digital and social side. And I'll present that kind of metric for anything, whether it's an article or anything we do on social. But on editorial, one thing I really like, and unfortunately it's very difficult to get this kind of info, but we will occasionally actually get an inquiry about a paper or an article. And so to me, if I can get any sort of interest, I feel like interest is the base level. If anyone just reads something and they're interested and they reach out, we did it. We won. Like, I want the gold star. And then the best case is obviously they make a sale or some kind of dialogue is started between us and them. And we had one paper here that I'm aware of, and it is challenging because I might not always hear this, because it's not like people are reaching out to me for sales. They're reaching out to salespeople, and also we're fairly flat. So a lot of sales stuff goes through our technical division, our survey services. So people are getting these requests. I might not know every time, but I did hear about one where someone from a major actually reached out and said, "Hey, I saw an article about a new technology, and I think it was JPT actually." I saw something back to my very first thing about everybody loves JPT, but they had seen something, and it was a very simple. It was a new product announcement. They have a little section in the front of the magazine called Technology Applications. And the guy who does that, he's been a good friend of mine for pretty much my whole oil and gas career. I met him early on, and he helped me a lot place all these new technology launches in that section. And so we did one of those at Gyrodata for one of our new things, and somebody saw that, and it's 200 words. It wasn't a full-length article.
It doesn't have to be huge.
And it doesn't have to be. It's back to our point about how people consume content these days. A lot of people are skimming, or they say, I've got this magazine, it's 50 pages. I'm going to hit 10 pages of this thing tonight. Maybe I'll pick it up tomorrow. Maybe it never sees the light of day again. So
exactly,
it's a little bit of digestible content, and it described what the new technology was, what the benefit of it was. And somebody read that and reached out to one of our senior vice presidents and said, "Hey, how's everything going? I just saw you had this new tech and JPT, and tell me more. I want to know about this. Is it maybe this is something that makes sense for us in this campaign we're going to do?" And I think that was maybe a month or 6 weeks ago or something. So I'm not sure what came of it, and challenging environment, blah blah blah. So who knows if the sale was made? But that to me is a huge validation and a huge success that this stuff works. And maybe it doesn't lead to a sale. That's okay. It's visible. It gets our name out there. We're saturating the market, so people start to recognize who Gyrodata is, what we do, especially for technologies that don't have a lot of visibility. Gyro's in the company name, so I think everybody think they've got that one figured out. But we do other stuff that is not in the company name, and with wireline logging services and wellbore tortuosity analysis and things that they're not upfront visible if you don't know about the company. So a lot of that.
Exactly.
I try to put that out there too, and they're very successful, and have customers. They have customers all over the place that run, tortuosity analysis to find out side loading forces against tubing, and if they need to place the artificial lift equipment in a different location because the force against the tubing or the casing is going to rupture or break and cost a lot of money. So we do stuff like that, and do people know that broadly?
Even just these conversations now, I'm learning so much more about Gyrodata just because we are having this conversation. But the things that are standing out most is you have to, and I think this goes back to some of the conversations we had previous to this and the intro, but you have to understand what you're trying to measure. You have to develop as a company your own KPI. You do have to have a voice regardless of where you fall in the oil field. And you have to, I mean, it's a pain in the ass, but you have to go and get these metrics in order to build up what it means to be successful. But what you're telling me after all that said is that it comes down to name recognition, aka visibility, and then building your list. You want visibility so that you are top of mind for everyone. And you know what's so funny about that is visibility and list building are literally the only two things in a digital and social world that you actually own. Everything else is out on a different platform owned by someone else that can be taken down or destroyed at any time. So it's kind of funny listening to you say all this because I'm a data nerd. I'm an engineer. I love hearing all of it. So when it comes time for you to put that year-end presentation together, call me because I want to be a part of that.
No, for sure. It's I'd be happy to make it shine a little more. I forgot who I was talking to somebody the other day, and he said, "Well, why do you want this information about whatever?" And I said, "I want to keep my job. I want people to understand because it's great that I don't think there's any question about what we do in our jobs, and that this kind of work is valuable. I mean, I think fundamentally everybody gets it, but it sure is nice to have something to back that up and present and say, I know that you understand that it's good to have articles and podcasts and make our people feel warm and fuzzy. I know you know that, but here's what it really is. On our LinkedIn channel last year we had X number of impressions. It's multiplied tenfold because we're using social media effectively. I've actually got one that I've been really kind of excited about and taking little screen caps and whatnot as our engagement rate versus some other companies. And I mean, at least for the past month, our engagement rate was almost 7% on LinkedIn, which was pretty much better than almost every other person or company that I put in the list to compare, including major competitors, including non-competitors, just other companies. But it's really a testament to the power of what we're trying to do. Because some of these other companies that were in there that were having 2% and 3%, they're massive. They have huge followership. They have social media teams that are dedicated to this. They have marketing teams that don't
land because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and we have 2 people, and so for us to have a channel with 19,000 and to be getting engagement levels like that. I'm very happy with that. And I even did it from January to now, and we were still beating out some of the other competitors. So it's kind of it wasn't 7%, it was 3.9 or something. So it wasn't as phenomenal, but it was still fine with me. And it was ahead of pretty much, all the ones that mattered. And so that's kind of stuff too, I want to show and say, look, it's important that we have our people. It's worth their time to do this, even if it's 15 minutes a day. And I've done some ghostwriting stuff here where I'll give our different people, I'll write articles for them, but more personal type stuff. And then they can post it on their channel and then we'll share it out via Gyrodata's channel. Mm-hmm. So it's this whole 3-point, they share, they get the name recognition and their own metrics and stuff. Then I'll take it and I'll put it on Gyrodata and get more information. Then everybody else shares both. And so it goes all over the place. And a lot of people, they have amazing ideas and they're intelligent and they have so much to say. And they just either feel like they lack a voice or they're not a good writer or they're shy or they're scared. Yeah. I mean, and it's just about giving them, empowering them with that and saying, let me take that burden away from you. And I'll write you a little 1,000-word piece to put on LinkedIn. And you put it up and, you can edit it. Please edit it. I want it to sound like you. There's no benefit if I just write it and then it sounds like me every time. That's just kind of duplicitous, but at least let me help you get the ideas in there and then you fix it and publish it yourself. I mean, and there's been some of those we put up lately and we might even do one tomorrow, and so it's I really like
It
that
could
because
be
it
that
helps.
you were on the Crude Audacity and it will be coming out soon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Stephen, I have loved this conversation. I completely agree with you. We're in such a pivot right now, and we are seeing revolutionary, creative, just mentalities come out. And to your point, we need more creatives in the oil and gas industry because, as an industry and ourselves, we haven't done that great of a job. We need more of a voice, and we need people to be more comfortable finding their voice. So, I know we're wrapping up here, but before I let you go, because we're going to have a lot more conversations about this. But before I let you go, what is a book, podcast, or other resource that has brought you value that you would encourage someone who is a creative and interested in industry to get involved in?
Well, I'm glad you let me know you were going to ask this because I've read some I've read a few books here and there on kind of the topic of branding or kind of telling stories or storytelling, things like that. And admittedly, I'm deeper on the literature side, so but nobody needs that. What I will say is there's actually a book. It was called Building a Story Brand by a guy named Donald Miller, and I really liked that because one of the things that he emphasized in the book was right back to what we talked about a little earlier was the value of words and specifically of good words, good copy, whatever you want to whatever we want to say, but focusing on the fact that without kind of this foundational aspect with writing and communication and language literacy, whatever, you don't have anything else. And this is a cornerstone of how we do business. It's certainly a cornerstone of basically civilization as we know it. And so I like that so much focuses on the visual aspect, kind of going back to what we had talked about. There's a lot of focus on that, a lot of jobs and people like things like 3D animations and
It's so cool.
Cool stuff. And oh man, it's so
Engineers
great.
like that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, they love it. And that's fine. I mean, I'm friends with animators. I've seen some amazing stuff. I wouldn't even know how to open the program to do it. So hey, that's amazing. But as a writer and as someone who's really like tried to argue for the value of this for a long time and why it's important, whether it's that book I mentioned or there was another one I read and I just can't remember what it was called, but it was something like The Hook was the name of the book or something like that. And the guy who wrote that, it might actually be called The Hook. Oh no, it's called Hook Point. I just looked it up. Hook Point. But and that's a very recent book. And that was kind of talking about in a society where attention spans are so bad, and you're on your phone and it's just boom, 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 boom. You're scrolling down at light speed, and or if you're reading a magazine or whatever, people are looking for that little nugget or that little thing that they can glean as quickly and easily as possible. Kind of the desire for like deep introspection or really sitting down with something and poring over it is just not as common, I think, especially with younger people. So that was his point, was you need this hook when you're writing good copy to draw someone in immediately, and not something that's like cheesy or gimmicky, but something that kind of transcends the boundaries of the industry you're working in to really be this more universal like hook point to grab someone and then drive them to take action somehow. And had some pretty interesting examples from there was a perfume campaign that he mentioned where the copywriter wrote something that it was something like the person who made this perfume swears under oath that it's not like has an illegal substance to make you smell sexy or something. And then they said, come to this event at the such and such hotel to get, we're giving out 10,000 samples. And so you can make sure that, you yourself are not poisoned by it. I'm butchering it, but it's in there. I mean, it's towards the beginning of the book. And so and sure enough, that event he talked about, and it was from like 40, 50 years ago. And that event they did had, I think, like 7,000, 8,000 attendees at this hotel for this little perfume launch. And so
the hotel was happy. They had a perfume launch and they created an experience. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So everybody wins. And it was all based on those little 2 lines of copy was how they made that happen. And then, there's the execution afterwards, but that was the hook that got people to go and for these folks to show up. And I forgot the exact number, but it said like their revenue grew from something like $20,000 over a certain amount of time to like $800,000. I'd have to look it up, but yeah, it was just a phenomenal, just an unthinkable increase. And so the power of words is very real, especially when accompanied by other like complementary, marketing avenues or activities or whatever that amplify the words and that the words amplify them. And so it's just kind of this big circle where it all just works better. So that's a couple things. That's a couple of resources I'd say.
No, that's awesome. Those are super good. I'm actually going to download both of them. Hopefully they're on Audible.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, there are so many other channels I want to go down, so we might have to break out and do individual discussions such as case studies and production planning, but we can do them through the Instagram channel. But this has been such an interesting conversation to see how you guys are navigating this digital world, how you're embracing it, where you're seeing changes. I love that you had to do everything from the ground up, because I really don't think that anybody should ever listen to someone who hasn't been there to do it themselves. So, I mean, this has been so fun. Thank you so much for such a cool, just a cool conversation about how the digital revolution is helping you, your career, your team, and Gyrodata. I think it's so amazing.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I agree. It was great. Nice to be candid and open and just talk about it. I'm very passionate about communications and good writing and everything that goes with that. And and like you said, it's such a delight to come into an organization where I was able to really be given the trust to build something pretty much from start and just have the authority to make these decisions and do things and for them to believe in me and let it roll. And that's what I said to my boss right when I started was, you'll get in as much as you'll get out of this as much as you put in. And like, I want you to shine. I mean, and I guarantee you, if I have the material to make it happen, I want to tell the stories because we really do. And whether it's business oriented and trying to make money or engagement or whatever, I'm all about it. And I want to make sure that, our people feel valued and that the industry understands what we do and everything in between. So it's been fun, and really thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
This conversation alone has been so informative to what all y'all do in every place you are. And it was supposed to just be like the digital discussion, and I love it. But what's most important that I love is that it sounds like Gyrodata is on the forefront of letting leadership rise, and that in and of itself is revolutionary in this industry. So thank you so much again for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Fabulous.